Welcome back, everyone, to the GOATcast podcast. I am CW, and today let's talk about the greatest player on the planet. I did a video where I explained how Michael Jordan had no rivals, but you really need to check that out to see the context of what I was saying. But here in this video, let's talk about his rivals. While I will always stand by the fact I do not feel Jordan had an individual who truly rivaled him during his 15 years in the association, I will say there were teams and even a few individuals who made things very hard on the GOAT. We will discuss just a few of those teams and players today and how those rivalries played out in his storied career. If you were around for those years, you know Jordan was a beast, assassin like with his mentality, where he made sure to kill the spirits of any player or teams that stepped in his way. I even think that he reveled in those that really challenged him on the court and made him work his butt off in the weight room or the actual court. This will probably be a series that will continue for a few parts, but today I will narrow it down to 4 obstacles that stood in his way, and basically were rivalries that he had to conquer in his career. But before we jump into those rivals, please like and subscribe. Can't do this without you guys, and the road to 500 is getting really close. I appreciate your views, and now let's get back to the breakdown and check out Michael Jordan and his rivals. Number 4. Larry Bird is without a doubt one of the greatest small forwards to ever play the game of basketball. Couple that with a team full of hard-nosed veterans and all-stars, and that's a recipe for trouble for a young superstar in the league. While one of Mike's biggest assets was his dogged determination to always overcome his obstacles, and in most cases he did, the Boston Celtics were one obstacle he never could conquer. Even with Bird giving Jordan the ultimate compliment of basically saying he's playing God in disguise when Jordan dropped 63 points in Boston Garden. Even with that burst of offense, Larry Legend and the C's still managed to win and ultimately swept Mike and the Bulls 2 years in a row, sending the GOAT packing and not even getting close to sniffing the second round of the playoffs. Larry would average 27.2 points, 9 rebounds, and 8.5 assists against those early Bulls in those back-to-back sweeps. Jordan, on the other hand, would average 39.7 points against those Celtics, 6.7 rebounds, and 5.8 assists through the 6 losses. As godly as that scoring number looks, it just shows that without the talent to back him up, Jordan was mortal. Even back then, with the Celtics obviously being the superior team, it seemed like they made sure to bring their A game when Michael Jeffrey stepped on the court with them. I'm sure Mike would have loved and even probably wished for one more series against that Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish squad, but it would never materialize, and he has to keep those blemishes on his legendary career forever. Number 3, the 90s New York Knicks. I wanted to put the Knicks higher on the list, but they just missed the mark. If there was ever a team that took the blueprint that the Bad Boy Pistons drew up, it was the Patrick Ewing 90s Knicks. Tough, check. Scrappy, check. They had their enforcers in Charles Oakley and Xavier McDaniel, a scoring guard that was not afraid of Jordan and those Bulls teams, plus a Hall of Fame center who didn't mind mixing it up in Patrick Ewing. On top of that, one of the greatest coaches as well with Pat Riley and the desire to rise to the top of the Eastern Conference as the old guard of the aforementioned Boston Celtics and Detroit Pistons were fading into the sunset. The revamped Bulls and Knicks were almost yearly on a collision course for supremacy in the East. Their games would end up being highlight clips of classic NBA moments in and of themselves. From Pippen's emphatic dunk over Patrick Ewing to John Stark's posterizing of Jordan and Horace Grant to one of the greatest misdirections in NBA history. These two squads never disappointed. They were even the team that was one win away from stopping the Bulls going back-to-back in '92 and possibly derailing the first three-peat. It had all the drama necessary to be memorable moments in a legend's career. Mike and the Bulls against those Patrick Ewing Knicks were 30-13, starting back in 1986. He would average 32.4 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 5.2 assists. So it seems as much pressure and physicality they tried to throw at the GOAT, he had an answer for them throughout those years. Number 2, Reggie Miller. So the first individual to show up on this list is a guy that, while in no ways was in Jordan's league, he was basically like a pest, a deterrent that would pop up and frustrate number 23 from time to time. A 6'7" shooting guard, if you grew up in the late 80s and throughout the 90s, you knew him very well. One of the early three-point threats in the NBA, he was a sniper if even given a slither of space. Quite simply, Reggie was a menace in the Eastern Conference, making his presence known against many of the top teams of that time, even famously feuding with Knicks superfan Spike Lee throughout his many visits to MSG. so it's no surprise he was a thorn in Jordan's side on many nights, even nearly spoiling the second three-peat in '98 after hitting a dagger 3 to tie the series at 2 apiece and eventually take it to a Game 7. Through the years, Jordan and Miller had multiple duels spanning 49 games in the regular season from 1987. Mike would average 29.5 points, 6.1 rebounds, and 5.4 assists against Reggie's Pacers, while Reggie would power in 19.1 points per game, 3.2 rebounds, and 2.8 assists. The rivalry, whatever you want to call it, ran deep. While Jordan was every bit of a psychotic killer, figuratively, not literally, he could mostly keep his cool in games. However, we famously remember how Reggie's pest-like antics wore Jordan's resolve out, and the result, well, was one of the NBA's memorable moments. Number 1, the Bad Boy Pistons. Did y'all really think there would be another number 1 on this first rival list? Unless you were from Detroit, you probably hated the Pistons of the mid-'80s and into the early '90s. They racked up more enemies than an anime protagonist. Whether Dr. J, Moses Malone, Larry Bird, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Charles Barkley, the Pistons got under everyone's skin. You probably no more than when they stood face to face with the GOAT himself. The Pistons made life a living, you know what, for Jordan and those Bulls, and seemed to bask in it. Well aware of the more lax physicality of the 80s and early 90s, they went right to the tip of being beyond flagrant with every elbow, shoulder grab, and just basic WWE suplex they handed out. Anchored by the irritating duo of Bill Laimbeer and Rick Mahorn, if you were so lucky as to get past Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars, well, your luck had run out once these two got a hold of you. Later, Dennis Rodman even joined and made his presence felt. With Chuck Daly as the mastermind, the Pistons knew those Bulls were basically a one-man team in the 80s and capitalized on it, creating their own Jordan rules for defending Mike. Kind of like the Celtics of those days, the Pistons would make Mike look both like a basketball deity and at the same time look every bit human as he was smattered to the hardwood floors in a heap. In fact, the Pistons' Jordan rules motivated Jordan to get in the gym to combat the physicality they gave for all those years. After coming up short in 1990, it even seemed like Jordan just would never be able to exercise those Piston demons as he had come up short 3 years in a row. Finally, in 91, Jordan didn't only conquer his rivals, he did it in emphatic fashion, sweeping them en route to his first championship ring. Even after all these years, Jordan had this to say about the Pistons. Meanwhile, this is what Isaiah had to say about him in episode 3 of The Last Dance. There's even rumors, innuendo, and maybe even truth in the fact that many believe Michael Jordan blackballed Isaiah Thomas from the Dream Team, but that's a whole other can of worms. As much as they beat up on Jordan, he still averaged 31.6 points per game, 6.2 rebounds, and 5.5 assists. Jordan actually had a 19-24 record against Isaiah and those Pistons. While as the years went on, Mike overcame this wild bunch. This was definitely a tough rivalry that made him into the great he became and who we would consider the GOAT. So there are 4 rivals that made Michael Jordan's quest to being great a little harder. I also know there are plenty more I could have pulled from, and I likely will in future installments, but those are 4 that many of us remember from back in the day that compiled some classic moments. There's still been no one I've seen that was able to truly rise to his level, but there have been a few that knocked him down a few pegs when they got the opportunity through the years. What do you guys think? Do you feel these are some of his top rivals? Or are there others that should have jumped the ones on this list? Let me know in the comments section. I really appreciate the interaction, so let me know what you think about the list. If you want to ascend to GOAT status just like number 23, please like and subscribe to the channel as we close in on 500 subscribers. I'll be back with more rivals, so stay tuned. Hope you enjoy the content, and thank you.